Numbers, which one, Rex? 27:12. Here we go. I was on 28. That's where I was messed up there. Okay. Here we go. One day the Lord said to Moses, chapter 27, verse 12. One day the Lord said to Moses, climb one of the mountains east of the river and look out over the land I have given the people of Israel. After you have seen it, you will you will die like your brother Aaron. That's one thing about these guys. They got the announcement of their death. For you both rebelled against my instructions in the wilderness of Zin. When the people of Israel rebelled, you failed to demonstrate my holiness to them at the waters. These are the waters of Meribah at Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin. Then Moses said to the Lord, O Lord, you are the God who gives breath to all creatures. Please appoint a new man as leader for the community. Give them someone who will guide them wherever they go and will lead them into battle. So the community of the Lord will not be like sheep without a shepherd. The Lord replied, take Joshua the son of Nun, who has the Spirit in him, and lay your hands on him. Present him to Eleazar the priest before the whole community and publicly commission him to lead the people. Transfer some of your authority to him so the whole community of Israel will obey him. When direction from the Lord is needed, Joshua will stand before Eleazar the priest, who will use the Urim, one of the sacred lots cast before the Lord, to determine his will. This is how Joshua and the rest of the community of Israel were to determine everything they should do. So Moses did as the Lord commanded. He presented Joshua to Eleazar the priest and the whole community. Moses laid his hands on him and commissioned him to lead the people, just as the Lord had commanded through Moses. The Lord said to Moses, give these instructions to the people of Israel. The offerings you present as special gifts are a pleasing aroma to me. They are my food. See to it that they are brought at the appointed times and offered according to the instructions. Say to the people, this is a special gift you must present to the Lord as your daily burnt offering. You must offer 2 one-year-old male lambs with no defects. Sacrifice one lamb in the morning and the other in the evening. With each lamb you must offer a grain offering of 2 quarts of choice flour mixed with 1 quart of pure oil of pressed olives. This is the regular burnt offering instituted at Mount Sinai as a special gift, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. Along with you, it must present the proper liquid offering of 1 quart of alcoholic drink, with each lamb poured out in the holy place as an offering to the Lord. Offer the second lamb in the evening with the same grain offering and liquid offering, it too a special gift, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. On the Sabbath day, sacrifice 2 one-year-old male lambs with no defects. They must be accompanied by a grain offering of 4 quarts of choice flour, moistened with olive oil, and a liquid offering. This is the burnt offering to be presented each Sabbath day, in addition to the regular burnt offering and its accompanying liquid offering. On the first day of each month, present an extra burnt offering to the Lord of 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 7 one-year-old male lambs, all with no defects. There must be accompanied by a grain offering of choice flour moistened with olive oil, 6 quarts with each bull, 4 quarts with the ram, and 2 quarts with each lamb. This burnt offering will be a special gift, a pleasing aroma unto the Lord. You must also present a liquid offering with each sacrifice, 2 quarts of wine for each bull, 1/3 of a gallon for the ram, and 1 quart for each lamb. Present this monthly burnt offering on the first day of each month throughout the year. On the first day of each month, you must also offer one male goat for a sin offering to the Lord. This is in addition to the regular burnt offering and its accompanying liquid offering. On the 14th day of the first month, you must celebrate the Lord's Passover. Here we go. On the following day, the 15th day of the month, a joyous seventh-day festival will begin, but no bread made with yeast may be eaten. The first day of the festival will be an official day for a holy assembly, and no ordinary work may be done on that day. As a special gift, you must present a burnt offering to the Lord, 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 7 one-year-old male lambs with no defects. These will be accompanied by a grain offering of choice flour moistened with olive oil, 6 quarts with each bull, 4 quarts with the ram, and 2 quarts with each of the 7 lambs. You must also offer a male goat as a sin offering of purity, to purify yourselves and make yourselves right with the Lord. Present those offerings in addition to your regular morning burnt offering. On each of the 7 days of the festival, this is how you must prepare the food offering that is presented as a special gift, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. These will be offered in addition to the regular burnt offerings and the liquid offerings. The 7th day of the festival will be another official day for a holy assembly. No ordinary work may be done on that day. At the festival of the harvest, when you present the first of your new grain to the Lord, you must call an official day for a holy assembly, and you may do no ordinary work on that day. Present a special burnt offering on that day, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. It will consist of 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 7 one-year-old male lambs. I'll break this down for you just a second after I read all this. These will be accompanied by a grain offering of choice flour moistened with olive oil, 6 quarts with each bull, 4 quarts with the ram, and 2 quarts with each of the 7 lambs. Also offer 1 male goat to purify yourselves and make yourselves right with the Lord. Prepare these special burnt offerings along with the liquid offerings in addition to the regular burnt offerings and its accompanying grain offering. Be sure that all the animals you sacrifice have no defects. This is a picture of the cross here, guys. So celebrate the festival of trumpets. Each year on the first day of the appointed month in early autumn, you must call an official day for a holy assembly, and you may do no ordinary work. On that day, you must present a burnt offering, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. It will consist of 1 young bull, 1 ram, 7 one-year-old male lambs with no defects. These must be accompanied by grain offerings of choice flour moistened with olive oil, 6 quarts with the bull, 4 quarts with the ram, and 2 quarts with each of the 7 lambs. In addition, you must sacrifice a male goat as a sin offering to purify yourselves and make yourselves right with the Lord. These special sacrifices are in addition to your regular monthly and daily burnt offerings, and they must be given with their prescribed grain offerings and liquid offerings. These offerings are given as a special gift to the Lord, a pleasing aroma to him. 10 days later, on the 10th day of the same month, you must call another holy assembly. On that day is the Day of Atonement. The people must go without food and must do no ordinary work. You must present a burnt offering as a pleasing aroma to the Lord. I will consist of 1 young bull, 1 ram, and 7 one-year-old male lambs, all with no defects. These offerings must be accompanied by the prescribed grain offerings of the choice flour moistened with olive oil, 6 quarts of choice flour with the bull, 4 quarts of choice flour with the ram, and 2 quarts of choice flour with each of these 7 lambs. You must also sacrifice 1 male goat for a sin offering. This is in addition to the sin offering of atonement and the regular daily burnt offering with its grain offering and their accompanying liquid offerings. 5 days later, on the 15th day of the same month, you must call another holy assembly of all the people, and you may do no ordinary work on that day. It is the beginning of the Festival of Shelters, a 7-day festival to the Lord. On the first day of the festival, you must present a burnt offering as a special gift, a pleasing aroma to the Lord. It consists of 13 young bulls, 2 rams, and 14 one-year-old male lambs with no defects. Each of these offerings must be accompanied by a grain offering of choice flour, moistened with olive oil, 6 quarts of each on the 13 bulls, 4 quarts of each of the 2 rams, and 2 quarts for each of the 14 lambs. You must also sacrifice a male goat as a sin offering in addition to the regular burnt offerings with its accompanying grain offering and liquid offering. On the second day of the 7th day of the festival, sacrifice 12 young bulls, 2 rams, and 14 one-year-old male lambs with no defects. Each of these offerings of bull, rams, and lambs must be accompanied by its prescribed grain offering and liquid offering. You must also sacrifice a male goat as a sin offering in addition to the regular burnt offering and accompanied grain offering and liquid offering. On the third day of the festival, sacrifice 11 young bulls, 2 rams and 14 one-year-old male lambs, all with no defects. Each of these offerings of bulls, rams, and lambs must be accompanied by its prescribed grain offering and liquid offering. You must also sacrifice a male goat, a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering with its accompanying grain offering and liquid offering. On the 14th day of the festival, sacrifice 10 young bulls, 2 rams, and 14 one-year-old male lambs, all with no defects. Each of these offerings of bulls, rams, and lambs must be accompanied by its prescribed grain offering and liquid offering. You must also sacrifice another male goat as a sin offering in addition to the regular burnt offering with its accompanying grain offering and liquid offering. On the 5th day of the festival, sacrifice 9 young bulls, 2 rams, and 14 one-year-old male lambs with no defects. Each of these offerings of bulls, rams, and lambs must be accompanied by its prescribed grain offering and liquid offering. You must also sacrifice as male goat as a sin offering in addition to the regular burnt offering with its accompanying grain offering and liquid offering. On the 6th day of the festival, sacrifice 8 young bulls, 2 rams, and 14 one-year-old male lambs with no defects. Each of these offerings of a bull, ram, and lamb must be accompanied by its prescribed grain offering and liquid offering. You must also sacrifice a male goat as a sin offering in addition to the regular burnt offering with its accompanying grain offering and liquid offering. On the 7th day of the festival, sacrifice 7 young bulls, 2 rams, and 14 one-year-old male lambs with no defects. Each of these offerings of bulls, rams, and lambs must be accompanied by its prescribed grain offering and liquid offering. You must also sacrifice 1 male goat as a sin offering in addition to the regular burnt offering with its accompanying grain offering and the liquid offering. On the 8th day of the festival, proclaimed another holy day, you must do no ordinary work on that day. You must present a burnt offering as a special gift, a pleasing aroma to the Lord, with a consist of 1 young bull, 1 ram, 7 one-year-old male lambs with no defects. Each of these offerings must be accompanied by a prescribed grain offering and liquid offering. You must also sacrifice 1 male goat as a sin offering, in addition to the regular burnt offering with its accompanying grain offering and liquid offering. You must present these offerings to the Lord at your annual festivals. These are in addition to the sacrifices offerings you present in connection with vows, or as voluntary offerings, burnt offerings, grain offerings, liquid offerings, or peace offerings. Lots of offerings. So as Moses gave all the instructions to the people of Israel as the Lord God commanded him. Then Moses summoned the leaders of the tribes of Israel and told them, "This is what the Lord has commanded. A man who makes a vow to the Lord or makes a pledge under an oath must never break it. He must do exactly what he said he would do. Let your yeses be yeses and your noes be noes. If a young woman makes a vow to the Lord and pledges under oath while she is still living at her father's home, and her father hears of a vow or a pledge and does not object to it, then all her vows and pledges will stand. But if her father refuses to let her fulfill the pledge or a vow on the day he hears of it, then all her vows and pledges will become invalid. The Lord will forgive her because her father would not let her fulfill them." Now, and I'll go back to this in just a second, but I need to keep going here because I got to do a complete picture of this whole thing. Now, suppose a young woman makes a vow or binds herself with an impulsive pledge and later marries. If her husband learns of her vow or pledge and does not object on that day, he overhears it, her vows and pledge stands. But if her husband refuses to accept her vow or impulsive pledge on the day he hears of it, he nullifies her commitment and the Lord will forgive her. If, however, a woman is a widow or is divorced, she must fulfill all her vows and pledges. But if suppose a woman is married and living in her husband's home when she makes a vow or binds herself with a pledge, if her husband hears of it and does not object to it, her vow and pledge will stand. But if her husband refuses to accept it on the day he hears it, her vow or pledge will be nullified and the Lord will forgive her. So her husband may either confirm or nullify any vows or pledges she makes to deny herself. But if he does not object on the day he hears of it, then he is agreeing to all her vows and her pledges. If he waits more than a day and then he tries to nullify the pledge, he will be punished. He will be punished for her guilt. These are the regulations that the Lord gave Moses concerning relationships between a man and his wife and between a father and a young daughter who still lives at home. Let me break down this for you just a second. Interestingly enough, I think it's very interesting that at the very beginning of this, we started reading in the end of chapter 27, that Moses goes, talks to God. God tells Moses, hey, your time's about up here. Just like Aaron, you're going to die, and it's all going to change. And Moses still had lots of energy, lots of vision. In Deuteronomy it says his eyes were not dim, which means he had vision, and his strength was not abated, which means he was strong in body. But it was his time, so God gave a succession plan. One of the things that we don't see in church world today, and we don't see in business, and we don't see in organizations, is succession plans. People go all the way until they can't go anymore, and then they leave the succession up to the people that are still left behind after they're gone. But a strong leader, as God obviously is a strong leader, will always have somebody in the place that's being positioned that God will select. That person that's in leadership in position today, even though Moses went right ahead and still was the leader, it was a position to allow Moses to be able to point Joshua out in front of everybody and bring him in front of the people and lay hands on him. So Moses began to affirm Joshua in front of all the people. That doesn't happen a lot today. It doesn't happen in business, doesn't happen in leadership. It typically is the person goes all the way to the very end, and then they leave the rubbish or the carnage behind, and then they end up going back trying to figure out how it works. And they're gone. So they'll go all the way till they can't go anymore. A leader should start beginning to pass the torch or appoint his successor that God gives him while he's still got strength and vision. That way they're running together in a time where everybody can see it's not much different than it won't be much of change. It's the same vision, just a different person leading the vision. That makes sense? Because what happens is, it's just like generation to generation. Most businesses, companies, and most churches, unfortunately, a pastor will be a leader. He dies, goes on, and a new guy comes along with a brand new vision and starts changing everything. But it really should be, a leader should be in place, and the successor should be coming up where the vision is going to it will be enhanced or developed based on the passion of the new younger person that's coming up. But it shouldn't be completely off kilter. That's why people can't recognize the church world today. You get a new person that comes in, they can't wait till the old person gets out of the picture. You got young people with passion, you got older people with wisdom, and you're people trying to get the older people out so the new passion can come in. But the reality of it is that passion and wisdom has to marry. Make sense? So when God told Moses, hey, your time's up, just because of what you did at the rock, if you remember that, he smote the rock twice and disobeyed the Lord, so he can't go into the promised land. He can see it, but he can't enter into it. And he was able to see it from a distance, but he couldn't enter into it. So he brings Joshua up in front of everybody. Then he begins to say, listen, this is how this is going to work. We're going to have some festivals. God, people don't like to hear this either, but God likes to party. I mean, he likes to have a good time. I mean, he throws festivals where they're dancing and I don't know if you guys have ever followed the Jewish people, but man, when they have a party, they have a party. And they dance. There's lots of music, and they enjoy themselves. So there's a week-long festival of Passover that they have, and there's a week, 50 days from Passover is Pentecost. That's another party that they throw. And then after that in the fall, they'll throw another party. And that party is the Feast of Tabernacles, which we're going to talk about here in a few moments. And it's a time where God dwelt with them. It's the Feast of Tents or the Feast of Tabernacles. So you have Passover, and they don't just party for a day. They party a week. It's all week long. And they're sacrificing all week long. They're celebrating all week long. They're doing rituals, routine all week long. And then 50 days after that, they do the tabernacle. So there's but inside each one of these week-long feasts are moments of atonement, trumpets. They all have meanings. And you'll see, as we get over even into the New Testament, you're going to see how some of these have exact meanings. I did a big study on this, if you'll remember, probably a couple of years ago on each one of those. And it's pretty important to know the significance of those things, because it's not just God telling them to slay animals and all that. Each one of those festivals, those feasts, have a significance spiritually. And, the Jewish calendar, the Jewish feasts, all kind of keep, spiritually things moving along. And many people don't pay much attention to those, but they do have significance, a lot of significance. It's just the American church, the Western church is just ignorant to a lot of that. These are the regulations that the Lord gave Moses concerning relationships between a man and a wife. Now, I'll go back here for a second. When he says the father, now, I want you to think about this. These are not just literal, they're metaphorically too, they're symbolic. The father has a daughter in his house. If the daughter makes a pledge that the father didn't approve, the father can nullify the pledge. Now, you are his daughter as the church. We are his daughter, right? We are also his wife, and we're also sons and daughters. So it all has an application. So a father doesn't approve of the pledge, he can nullify it. So it should make a little bit of pressure, take a pressure off of us, because it goes on the next verse and says, a husband, if he doesn't approve the pledge of the wife, he can nullify it too. Okay? So the Father being God, Jesus being the husband, we being the bride of Christ, it should take the pressure off of you not to worry about taking risks because God's got you. Let's say you have an intention of doing something and your motivation is right, and you decide, I need to do this. Make it real practical. I'm ready to buy another house. I mean, this is just real practical everyday life. I'm ready to buy another house. So you go forward moving to buy this other house. And you're thinking the Lord's in it because your motivation's in it. Well, he can nullify that pledge. If it doesn't work out, he knows how to block everything that needs to be blocked so you can take the pressure off of you. He also knows how to get you in time, because sometimes we get ahead of ourselves. And we get ahead of ourselves, he puts us back in time. So he'll honor the yes, and then he will let you walk that thing out in that pledge. But if God is your husband, allows it to go forward, then God will see it all the way through. If he nullifies it, there's a good chance before you ever get to the signing table, or there's a good chance before you ever get to the drawing board, he's going to knock it in the head. He's not going to let you go forward, get yourself in a jam, and go, well, I told you so. No. If you find yourself in the middle of it where you haven't seen the fullness come to pass yet, then you have to keep going, or you just have to recognize, oh, I'm being stretched, but he's put me in time. Because he's working out here in somebody else's life that you're not even aware he's working. Make sense? I've done it before. I mean, I've gotten ahead of myself and then have to wait and then realize, oh, my Lord, how did this happen? And then once it all finally evens out and does complete, then the Lord begins to show you, oh, I see what you were doing. He was working over here behind the scenes before you even knew what he was doing. So he was seeing things in other people's lives that you were not even aware that he's looking at. Make sense? So you can trust him is what I'm saying. It's okay. Take a risk. If your motivation's pure, not reckless, but a risk. It's okay to take a risk. Because your father or your husband is going to back you. Then the Lord said to Moses in 31, here we go, it's good. On behalf of the people of Israel, take revenge on the Midianites for leading them into idolatry. Now, I want you to think about this. The Midianites were the ones that wouldn't let them go through the land. Really? Remember? After that, you will die and join your ancestors. Now, think about that. Moses, you're going to go into battle here. This is your last war. We're going to retire your jersey. It's over. And you're dying. Now, if I'm Moses, I'm not wanting that to be a 7-day war. I want that thing to last for a few years. I don't know about you all. I really don't care if these people are in the wilderness or not. I'm just, right? But these guys, if you'll notice, Aaron and Moses, they didn't fear death. And I want you to see that. They were in such communication with the Lord, they recognized, because Moses wrote the book of Genesis too, they recognized there were waters in heaven and waters in the earth, both physically and metaphorically. Metaphorically, waters are people. So he even said when this 27th chapter, when we started reading it, he said, you're going to go with the rest of your people. You're going to go be with your people. So that tells you when this life is over, you are reunited with all of those loved ones and family that has gone on before you. They've just crossed over to the waters on the other side. They're people. Waters represent people groups, right? So you have waters in heaven, physically. You have waters in earth, physically. You have waters in heaven, spiritually, metaphorically, which are people. The voice of God was as many waters. That's people. That's just not a wave. It's people, right? When he's gathered around a throne and there was a sea of glass, people. Not just waters, but people. Okay? So you see the spiritual component and the metaphor component as well as the natural application. So Moses said to the people, choose some strong men, some men, and arm them to fight the Lord's war of revenge against the Midianites. Here we go. From each tribe of Israel, send 1,000 men into battle. So they chose 1,000 men from each tribe of Israel, a total of 12,000 men armed for battle. Then Moses sent them out, 1,000 men from each tribe, and Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest, led them into battle. They carried along the holy objects of the sanctuary and the trumpets for sounding the charge. They attacked Midian as the Lord had commanded Moses, and they killed all the men. All 5 of the Midianite kings, look at this, Evi, Rechem, Zur, Hur, and Reba died in the battle. Look at this. They also killed Balaam, son of Beor, with the sword. You remember that story last week? Balaam's the one that led him to the wrong direction there. Was the prophet, and they killed his son. Then the Israelite army captured the Midianite women and children and seized their cattle and flocks and all their wealth as plunder. They burned all the towns and villages where the Midianites had lived. After they had gathered the plunder and captives, both people and animals, they brought them all to Moses and Eleazar the priest and to the whole community of Israel, which was camped on the plains of Moab beside the Jordan River across from Jericho. Now keep in mind, we're talking from 3rd Avenue to the river. We're talking, almost a rock throw. That's how close this is all happening. And the Jordan River was only the size of a creek. It wasn't very big at all. It wasn't like the Ohio River at all. So Moses, Eleazar, and the priests and all the leaders of the community went out to meet them outside the camp. But Moses was furious with all the generals and captains who had returned from the battle. Watch this. Why have you let all the women live? He demanded. These are the very ones who followed Balaam's advice and caused the people of Israel to rebel against the Lord at Mount Peor. They are the ones who caused the plague to strike the Lord's people. So look at this. So kill all the boys and all the women who have had intercourse with a man. Only the young. Man, this is hard to believe it's in the Bible, isn't it? You think about it. Everybody likes to read Jesus healing his hem of his garment, people touching the hem of his garment. But it's in here too. Only the young girls who are virgins may live. You may keep them for yourselves. All of you who have killed anyone or touched a dead body must stay outside the camp for 7 days. You must purify yourselves and your captives on the third and seventh day. Purify all your clothing too, and everything made of leather, goat hair, and wood. Then Eleazar the priest said to the men who were in the battle, the Lord has given Moses this legal requirement. Anything made of gold, silver, bronze, iron, tin, or lead, that is, all metals that do not burn, must be passed through fire in order to be made ceremonially pure. These metal objects must then be further purified with the water of purification, but everything that burns must be purified by the water alone. On the 7th day you must wash your clothes and be purified, then you may return to the camp. And the Lord said to Moses, You and Eleazar, the priests, and the family leaders of each tribe are to make a list of plunder taken in the battle, including the people and the animals. Then divide the plunder into 2 parts and give half to the men who fought in the battle and the other half to the rest of the people. From the army's portion, first give the Lord his share of the plunder, one of every 500 of the prisoners, and of the cattle, the donkey, the sheep, and the goats. Give the share to the army's half to Eleazar the priest as an offering to the Lord. From the half that belongs to the people of Israel, take one of every 50 of the prisoners and of the cattle, donkeys, sheep, goats, and other animals. Give this share to the Levites who are in charge of maintaining the Lord's tabernacle. So Moses and Eleazar the priest did as the Lord had commanded Moses. The plunder remaining from everything the fighting men had taken totaled, look at this, 675,000 sheep and goats. We're only talking 12,000 men. That's a lot of 72,000 cattle, 61,000 donkeys, and 32,000 virgin girls. Half of the plunder was given to the fighting men. It totaled 337,500 sheep and goats, of which 675 were the Lord's share. 36,000 cattle, of which 72 were the Lord's share. 30,500 donkeys, of which 61 were the Lord's share. And 16,000 virgin girls, of whom 32 were the Lord's share. Moses gave all the Lord's share to Eleazar the priest, just as the Lord had directed him. Half of the plunder belonged to the people of Israel, that Moses separated from the half belonging to the fighting men. It totaled 337,500 sheep and goats, 36,000 cattle, 30,500 donkey, 16,000 virgin girls. From the half share given to the people, Moses took one of every 50 prisoners and animals and gave them to the Levites, who maintained the Lord's tabernacle. All this was done as the Lord had commanded Moses. Then all the generals and captains came to Moses and said, "We, your servants, have accounted for all the men who went out to the battle under the command. Not one of us is missing. So we are presenting the items of gold we captured as an offering to the Lord from our share of the plunder. Armbands, bracelets, rings, earrings, and necklaces. This will purify our lives before the Lord and make us right with him." Watch this. So Moses and Eleazar the priest received the gold from all the military commanders, all kinds of jewelry and crafted objects. In all, the gold that the generals and captains presented as a gift to the Lord weighed, look at this, 420 pounds. All the fighting men had taken some of the plunder for themselves. So Moses and Eleazar the priest accepted the gifts from the generals and captains and brought the gold to the tabernacle as a reminder to the Lord that the people of Israel belonged to him. The tribes of Reuben and Gad owned vast numbers of livestock. So when they saw that the lands of Jazer and Gilead were ideally suited for their flocks and their herds, they came to Moses, Eleazar the priest, and other leaders of the community, and they said, "Notice the towns of Adaroth, Dibon, Jazer, Nimrah, Heshbon, Elialah, Zimba, Nebo, and Beon. The Lord has conquered this whole area for the community of Israel, and it is ideally suited for all of our livestock. If we have found favor with you, please let us have this land as a property instead of giving us land across the Jordan River. Do you intend to stay here while your here we go. Do you intend to stay here while your brothers go across and do all the fighting?" Moses asked the men of Gad and Reuben. "Why do you want to discourage the rest of the people of Israel from going across the land the Lord has given them? Your ancestors did the same thing when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land. After they went up to the valley of Eshcol and explored the land, they discouraged the people from Israel from entering the land the Lord was giving them. Then the Lord was very angry with them, and he vowed, 'Of all those I rescued from Egypt, no one who was 20 years old or older will ever see the land I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and they have not obeyed me wholeheartedly.' The only exception was Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and Kenizzai, and Joshua, the son of Nun, for they have wholeheartedly followed the Lord. The Lord was angry with Israel, made them wander in the wilderness for 40 years until the entire generation that sinned in the Lord's sight had died. But here you are, you brood of sinners, doing exactly the same thing. You're making the Lord even angrier with Israel. If you turn away from him like this and he abandons them again in the wilderness, you'll be responsible for destroying an entire nation." But they approached Moses and said, "We simply want to build pens for our livestock and fortified towns for our wives and our children. Then we will arm ourselves and lead our fellow Israelites into battle until we have brought them safely to their land. Meanwhile, our families will stay in the fortified towns we built here so they will be safe from any attacks by the local people." We will not return to our homes until all the people of Israel have received their portions of land. But we do not claim any of the land on the other side of the Jordan. We would rather live here on the east side and accept this as our grant of land." Then Moses says, "If you keep your word and you arm yourselves for the Lord's battles, and if your troops cross the Jordan and keep fighting until the Lord has driven out his enemies, then you may return with the Lord had conquered the land. You will have fulfilled your duty to the Lord and the rest of the people of Israel, and the land of the east side of the Jordan will be your property from the Lord. But if you fail to keep your word, then you will be sinned against the Lord, and you may be sure that your sin will find you out. Go ahead and build your towns for the families and pens for your flocks, but do everything you have promised." Then the men of Gad and Reuben replied, "We are your servants. We'll follow your instructions exactly. Our children's wives, flocks, and cattle will stay here in the towns of Gilead. But all who are able to bear arms will cross over to fight for the Lord, just as you have said." So Moses gave orders to Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun and the leaders of the clans of Israel. He said, "The men of Gad and Reuben who are armed for battle must cross the Jordan with you to fight for the Lord. If they do, give them the land of the Gilead on the property where the land is conquered. But if they refuse to arm themselves and cross over with you, then they must accept land with the rest of you in the land of Canaan." The tribes of Gad and Reuben said again, "We are your servants. We do exactly as the Lord has commanded. We will cross the Jordan into Canaan fully armed for the fight, but our property will be here on this side of the Jordan." So Moses assigned the land to the tribes of Gad and Reuben and half of the tribe of Manasseh, son of Joseph. He gave them the territory of King Sihon, of the Amorites, and the land of King Og of Bashan, the whole land with its cities and its surrounding lands. The descendants of Gad built the towns of Dibon, Adaroth, and Aurora. Aroth, Shaphan, Jazer, Jogabeg, Beth Marah, and Beth Rahan. These were the fortified towns with pens for their flocks. The descendants of Reuben built the towns of Heshbon, Eliah, Kirioth, Neba, Peliam, Beliam, Sibamah. They changed the names of some of the towns they conquered, I would have too, and rebuilt. Then the descendants of Machir, the tribe of Manasseh, went to Gilead and conquered it and drove out the Amorites living there. So Moses gave Gilead the Machirites, the descendants of Manasseh, and they settled there. The people of Jair, another clan of the tribe of Manasseh, captured many of the towns in Gilead and changed the name of the region to the towns of Jair. Meanwhile, a man named Nobah captured the town of Canath and the surrounding villages, and he renamed the area Nobah and after himself. This is the route the Israelites followed as they marched out of Egypt under the leadership of Moses and Aaron. In the Lord's direction, Moses kept written record of their progress. These are the stages of their march, identified by the different places where they stopped along the way. They set out from the city of Ramses in early spring, on the 15th day of the first month. On the morning after the first Passover celebration, the people of Israel left defiantly in full view of all the Egyptians. He's rehearsing this. Meanwhile, the Egyptians were burying out all their firstborn sons, whom the Lord had killed the night before. The Lord had defeated the gods of Egypt, and that night with great acts of judgment. After leaving Ramses, the Israelites set up camp at Succoth. Then they left Succoth and camped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. I know this is a lot of reading, but this is important. They left Etham and turned back toward Pirath, opposite Baal-Zephon, and camped near Migdol. They left Pirath and crossed the Red Sea into the wilderness beyond. Then they traveled for 3 days into the Etham wilderness and camped at Marah. They left Marah and camped at Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees. They left Elim and camped beside the Red Sea. They left the Red Sea and camped in the wilderness of Sin. They left the wilderness of Sin and camped in Dophkah. They left Dophkah and camped at Alush. They left Alush and camped at Rephidim, where there was no water for the people to drink. They left Rephidim and camped in the wilderness of Sinai. They left the wilderness of Sinai and camped at Kibroth Hattaavah. They left Kibroth Hattaavah and camped at Hazerim. They left Hazeroth and camped at Rithmah. They left Rithmah and camped at Rimmon Perez. They left Rimmon Perez and camped at Libnah. They left Libnah and camped at Rizah. They left Rizah and camped at Keheliath. They left Keheliath and camped at Mount Shafur. They left Mount Shafur and camped at Haradin. They left Haradin and camped at Machelath. They left Machelath and camped at Tabah. Remember, they have to tear down every single time they move. They're tearing that crazy thing down. They're tearing that thing down now and putting that thing back up. That's a lot of work. And fighting along the way. They left Tirith and camped at Terah. They left Terah and camped at Mithka. They left Mithka and camped at Hashmana. They left Hashmana and camped at Mosereth. They left Mosereth and camped at Bana-Jakin. They left Bana-Jakin and camped at Horah Haggadag, whatever that is. They left Horah Haggadag and camped at Jotbah. They left Jotbah and camped at Abranah. They left Abranah and camped at Ezion-Geber. They left Ezion-Geber and camped at Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin. They left Kadesh and camped at Mount Or, the border of Edom. While they were at the foot of Mount Hor, Aaron the priest was directed by the Lord to go up the mountain where he died. This happened in midsummer on the first day of the 5th of the 14th year, Israel's departure from Egypt. Aaron was 123 years old when he died there at Mount Or. At that time, the Canaanite king of Arad, who lived in the Negev in the land of Canaan, heard that the people of Israel were approaching this land. Meanwhile, the Israelites left Mount Or and camped at Zalmunna. They left Zalmunna and camped at Punin. They left Punin and camped at Oboth. They left Oboth and camped at Li-Abarim, the border of Moab. They left Li-Abarim and camped at Dibon-Gad. They left Dibon-Gad and camped at Ammon Diblathim. They left Almon Diblathim and camped in the mountains east of the river near Mount Nebo. They left the mountains of east of the river and camped in the plains of Moab beside the Jordan River across from Jericho. Along the Jordan River, they camped from Beth Jemetheth as far as the meadows of Acacia on the plains of Moab. While they were camped near the Jordan River on the plains of Moab, opposite Jericho, the Lord said to Moses, "Give the following instructions to the people of Israel when you cross the Jordan River into the land of Canaan. You must drive out all the people living there. You must destroy all their carved molten images and demolish all their pagan shrines. Take possession of the land and settle in it because I have given it to you to occupy. You must distribute the land among the clans by sacred lot in proportion to their size. A larger portion of land will be allotted to each of the larger clans, and a smaller portion will be allotted to each of the smaller clans. The decision of the sacred lots is final. No bartering or trading. In this way, the portions of the land will be divided among your ancestral tribes. But if you fail to drive out all the people who live in the land, those who remain will be like splinters in your eyes, look at this, and your thorns in your sides. They will harass you in the land where you live. Don't play with them. Take them out. I will do to you what I had planned to do to them." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Give these instructions to the Israelites when you come into the land of Canaan, which I'm giving you as your special possession. These will be the boundaries." Here's the deal. 10:30. Here's the deal. And that's a lot of reading, I know, but it's important. They come out of Egypt, come out of the Red Sea, crossed over. They got rebellious along the way. They crossed over and went in circles. They went around and round and round in circles. Think about this. Look at all the unnecessary work. It was an 11-day journey to get across that Red Sea, to get across that Jordan River. It was 11 days. That's all it was supposed to take. It took 40 years. They set up and tore down at least 40 or 50 times. I didn't count them as I went, but there was a lot of times they were camped here, from there to here, there to here. 11 days. Look at all the unnecessary people that didn't make it and all the work that was on their backs because of their unbelief. Only because of their unbelief. God called it sinning against them. Now here's what happened. You know what the story. They had feasts and festivals, all memorializing all the things that happened coming out of Egypt. So God was setting them apart and giving them an opportunity to celebrate their victories and his victories. So they come all the way to this place. Now they camp right across the river from the Jordan River. They're looking at their land. Now keep in mind, the spies had already gone through several years earlier and came back and said, "We can't take them." They were like grasshoppers in their eyes. Remember that? They're going, "We can't do this." So they come back, and because of their unbelief, they run around a few more times. And they run around a few more times, and people end up dying, and they set up and they tear down. Why? Because 2 people come back and said, "We can't take this." Aaron dies. Moses is getting ready to die. And Moses couldn't go to take the children into the promised land because he had disobeyed God by smoting the rock twice. What that really is saying, he was told to smote the rock once. Smite it once, then speak to the rock the second time. The first rock is Christ on the cross. The second time you do it, you speak to it by faith. But Moses tried to crucify Christ twice, metaphorically. The first time he smote the rock with a rod, which is a symbolism of Christ being crucified, but then and punctured in the side. But then the second time, Moses gets mad and strikes the rock again. That would almost say that Christ had to be crucified a second time. Christ has to be crucified once. That sacrifice is eternal. Now we're not going to the rock, with the rod to the rock. We're now coming from the rock by faith with our words. Okay? Moses should have prophesied to that rock, and that rock would have run out water. But what happened was they get to the Red Sea. Here's the real issue. Gad and Reuben and half the tribe of Manasseh get here. They get satisfied with the land. They start looking at all their stuff, and they say, you know what? We're happy here. We're happy. I want you to think about this. They could have had that 40 years ago. It was a lot of unnecessary deaths. They could have stayed right there for 40 years. They didn't. God wanted them to cross over, but He gave them the hearts of the desires of their heart. When that thing changed, and the people were going in, Moses said one thing to him: listen, it really isn't about you. And I got to go, but this is the thing. A lot of people today, let me bring this to 2016. A lot of people today say, man, I don't need to be a part of a church. I am the church. I just stay home. I can just worship God here. You can, okay? It's wonderful to do that. But this is a picture of people that are self-centered and thinking of themselves and thinking of their clan, their family, their stuff, and really hoping everybody else can just go get their thing, right? But Moses, being who he was, said, no. You don't have the luxury of disconnecting. You can't settle here while your brothers are hurting and fighting. You either get in the game and fight with them so they can possess their stuff. In other words, you got a neighbor that living across town and you're living okay. You don't have a luxury, and you're aware of that situation. You don't have the luxury of just hibernating, isolating, and worshiping God and putting on your worship music without helping them get there. Fight for them, with them. Engage the best that you can. That make sense? And the church has fallen into that scenario. And I'll tell you why. Because, and I don't blame the church, because, man, look at how many sacrifices. Look at all the rules, all the regulations that were put on people back then. That's hard to live. I mean, that was hard. The only reason I read that, because I just wanted to show discipline, or create discipline in me to read that and not skip over that like it was just some insignificant part of the story. Even though I was repeating myself about every 3 or 4 scriptures. And I thought, no, I'm going to read this for this reason. If the Lord gave that kind of detail, He means that kind of detail. And sometimes we look over things thinking it's not that important because I think we already know it. We got to be careful the same way. The church has to be connected to people, and the people have to be connected to each other, or you really just have an isolationism where you're just, it's just about me and the Lord, me and my God. I can stay home. The church religion has hurt people for so many years that they put rules, regulations, and controls environments, and they couldn't live up under it. So people got offended and got hurt. But I'm here to tell you, there's a whole new generation of people now that are coming up that are starving for relationship and connectivity and truth. Not just, here's my doctrine and my bylaws. Here's just not my denomination and what I believe. And if you'll keep doing this, you'll do well. And if you'll be fine, if you just do these things. And here's what's expected of you. And that just won't work in today's world, because we got to cross over. And we got to help people get to where they're going. Then you can come back and settle at your house, but you got to help people to get over. Amen? Amen. See you in a few minutes.